Hello everyone, my name is Megan Druckrye and I'm a music therapist that works in the hospice setting here in the Twin Cities. I've been working in hospice since about 2007 and I've been with Allina Health Hospice since 2008. I'm just going to go through each of my slides with you and you guys can move the PowerPoint along. When I say go to the next slide, we can kind of do it together like that. So on my second slide, I have a quotation from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who is considered like the godmother of the hospice movement, the modern hospice movement. And she says, "For those who seek to understand it, death is a highly creative force. The highest spiritual values of life can originate from the thought and study of death." And I think there's so much to explore in the work with death, and we can use music therapy to help people who are experiencing and approaching death. So many different things that music can help us do, and I'm excited to go through all the different things that music can do. On the third slide, what is hospice? And who do we serve? So hospice patients who can enter the hospice program are people who have a prognosis of 6 months or less to live, and that needs to be declared by their physician. We also serve their families and their caregivers. Patients are not really in the hospital in hospice. Even though on the hospital there can be hospice units where the people who are transitioning to death can kind of go on those units, but in home hospice care, we are really going out to where the patients normally live. So like in nursing homes, assisted livings, their own personal homes, group homes, and designated hospice houses that are staffed with nurses, things like that. Slide 4. What are some of the most common reasons or diagnoses that people have to come onto hospice and to be on the hospice program? They have all types of cancer. Some have heart disease or kidney disease, respiratory failure or COPD, Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia, Parkinson's disease, Lewy body dementia, dysphagia, which is the inability to swallow. And so when people can't swallow, they choke a lot, and sometimes there's a risk for pneumonia when you get stuff stuck in your lungs, and you can't really recover from that. Pneumonia and sepsis, ALS, and problems that arise from strokes. Slide 5. I wanted to mention this first and foremost because I think a lot of people think that hospice care is kind of scary. How can they do that work? It's so tough. But truly, it's not as bad as you think it is because we never work alone. Never work alone. We have the interdisciplinary team for hospice, which includes the physician, a bunch of nurses, some LPNs who help the nurses, home health aides who they do bath cares, nail cares, kind of keeping the patient groomed and feeling good and tidy and hygienic. Spiritual care are chaplains, social workers, and integrative therapists, which includes music therapy, massage therapy, aromatherapy, pet therapy, physical therapy. We have a volunteer coordinator that matches volunteers in the community with different hospice patients and grief counselors. And so I'll go back to volunteers. One of the requirements by Medicare is for hospice programs to have volunteers. And so volunteers can help people with chores. They can spend time with patients, reading books, doing projects, things like that. And our grief counselors, at least with Allina Hospice, they will follow the family or the main caregiver of the deceased patient for 13 months. So they're eligible to get counseling and bereavement for 13 months after the patient dies, which is a huge benefit. Slide 6. Okay, in hospice, we focus our music therapy interventions in the following ways. We can help with pain and discomfort. We can relieve anxiety and restlessness. There's a lot of restlessness that comes in the dying process. Insomnia. We can help with depression and loss of meaning. We can help with anticipatory grief and patients and families that have multiple losses going on. We help patients who have difficulty expressing their feelings, helping with the family cope through the situation. We help patients who are isolated, especially now when you think of the current pandemic, all of the patients that are not allowed to go to activities, or they're not allowed visitors inside the building. A lot of those places we can still get into, and we can provide that comfort and support to patients who are no longer getting up and out of their rooms. They're just declining. So we help with isolation. Dyspnea is difficulty breathing. There's so many things in music that can help us take a deeper breath and can slow our breath, and relaxation techniques, things like that. Patients who have a need for some meaningful engagement. Maybe you've seen this before with music and memory. Music is very stimulating for your memory and your cognition, and a lot of the folks that we see in hospice have cognitive deficits that music really, really reaches like no other discipline. So that's a really cool thing to see. Life review is huge. I mean, think about your life. Think about how music has punctuated every phase of your life, how you can go back in time and think about a certain period of your life, and you might have a soundtrack for that period. Well, when we do life review in music therapy with patients, we're providing all of their preferred music, and all the stories and memories come flooding back, and it's a great way for patients to engage in a life review. A lot of the times patients have a loss of speech or language barriers, and so getting that support through music is a way that goes over just verbal communication. We can provide spiritual support with meaningful hymns and other special songs from different faith backgrounds. We can do bedside vigils while people are in their actively dying process. We can bring the family together to sit around the patient's bedside and sing those really special songs together, and we can watch how the patient will a lot of the times relax with that preferred music and that special attention. Sometimes patients even die while we are singing and playing for them, which is a very, very special and kind of a unique time. It doesn't happen as much as you think it does, but it definitely does happen. And we can also help patients and their families prepare memorial services and participate in providing the music for memorial services and funerals. Slide 7. So how do we do it? Well, we follow a medical model of care, which means we assess symptoms of each patient, their behaviors and needs. We set goals and objectives based on what those needs are. We design and implement interventions to address goals, and we really always emphasize the client's preferred music. That's really essential. Which also means that if you work in hospice, you really have to have a very wide repertoire. Just about every decade, something from every denomination and religion, patriotic, country western, different, I could go on and on, patriotic, folk songs, all kinds of things, just prepared as tools, songs that we know that are good for music therapy. We also sometimes rely on recorded music, which is fine too, and that has its own time and place. Okay, so we also evaluate how effective the music therapy is through measurements, and we document in a clinical way in the patient's medical record, which is shared with the whole hospice team. Slide 8. So many times when patients are referred to music therapy, the family will say, well, what is it? What are we gonna do? And either the social worker who's making the referral can tell them, or I can call them on my, call them for the first time and say, well, we'll just meet and we'll, get to know each other. I'll get to know what music the patient likes, and we can see what the needs are, and then we can see what we can do with music and how we can, make it a better situation. So on bullet point number 3, we can sing favorite songs, write new songs. We can do a life review and address recurring themes throughout the patient's life. Sometimes we could create a song autobiography, which is kind of like a legacy project that a patient could have for their family after they pass. So, for instance, let's say the patient is wanting to share all of their favorite music from their lifetime, what's the most meaningful songs, and they're going to give it to their family as a gift for their memory. So we can make a playlist or a CD, or we can write it down. We can do audio recordings, and then that family will have that gift forever and ever. And that's part of the patient's legacy. We do some relaxation techniques that help with dyspnea, or the difficulty breathing, with anxiety and restlessness. Some patients just would like the imagery. We can do music and imagery and help people get to a better place in their head. We make music together. Some patients have the energy to play instruments or sing along, things like that. We can discuss lyrics to songs that are meaningful. That's a really big one. We do a lot of discussing of favorite composers, artists, musical elements, things like that. And I talked about the Legacy Project already. And so after we do all those things, we just keep going and see, how often should I come? How often should I visit? And how long? And is it going well? What could we do differently? Typically in hospice, I would see a patient about every other week in an ideal setting. Sometimes we're seeing patients every week if they really have a high need. And sometimes we're seeing patients a couple times in the week if they're actively dying or declining and the need is really there. Some other patients who have busy lives maybe just want us once a month. So it's different for everyone. All right, slide 9. I hope this link works for you guys. It's a video that my colleagues and I made in 2019 to promote music therapy. And we actually raised a lot of money for our organization by making this video for our yearly fundraiser. And it gives a snippet. It shows me working with a patient at the veterans home and his family. And it shows my colleague Anna working with another patient at our hospice house called the Weedham House. It's in Brooklyn Park. And just if you could watch the first 8 minutes, maybe after this slide presentation is done, you will learn a little bit more about music therapy in action and be able to see it in action. So, slide 10 here. Is hospice music therapy a fit for you? Well, as I've been talking, has it been resonating with you at all? Does it seem like something that might be a good fit for you? I wrote down some characteristics that you can refer to that that might help see if that's for you. So, Do you have a desire to help others? That's first and foremost. And I assume since you're interested in music therapy, you have a desire to help others. You're an accomplished musician. You're able to sight read quickly and learn new material quickly because time is of the essence, really. Are you versatile and flexible? Are you able to adjust to ever-changing circumstances? One of my most favorite things about music therapy is sometimes there's just no plan. I go in and I see the patient and I assess on the spot and we do whatever is needed on the spot. And I might have had an idea for the day of what we were going to accomplish, and that could go right out the window sometimes. So we just have to assess in the moment and prepare our sessions on the spot. Are you able to offer emotional support to clients and families? Do you have empathy? Are you patient? Are you open to new ideas? Are you mature, and do you have tact and self-awareness? That's probably good for any therapy setting. Do you have a sense of humor? People sometimes question me on this one, but you know, I think a sense of humor, if somebody comes to you, a patient with a sense of humor, we have to embrace that and give it back to them. Because in my own experience, I've found that end-of-life issues, if you don't laugh, you cry all the time. Maybe some of you have heard a statement similar like that, but we're not playing a dirge all the time, a funeral song. We're not morose, being around death all the time. There's a lot of humor in life review, in relationships, in music, in interaction. And if you can be lighthearted with people who are experiencing a very heavy thing, it is very therapeutic. Are you creative? Can you express yourself well in speech and in writing? And do you work well with other healthcare providers? So teamwork is essential. We need all of our team members, and we can't get the work done without each other. So working as a team. Do you have solid boundaries? This is huge because we're going into people's homes. So they want to know about you. Of course, you can tell them some things, but you can't tell them everything. That's just too much information. Can you not take the work home? Meaning, after working on a really hard case, can you come home and put it aside and compartmentalize that difficulty? Those are all types of having good boundaries. And then, are you ready to work with death and dying? Not everybody is, but some people, being ready to work with death and dying is different than being ready for death and dying. So are you mature enough to handle the difficult topics of death and dying and to be able to witness it? And then being proactive with self-care. It's really built into our team. It's built into the culture of hospice work. We take a lot of time to take care of ourselves and to take care of each other, to check in, to do support groups, to be able to speak with anybody on the team about problems going on, things like that. And then doing your own self-care at home. It's really important that you have your own routines for that. It's probably good for any field or any client population in music therapy. So I've listed some resources on slide 11, and on slide 12 is my contact information. I would absolutely love to take questions from you guys, and I'd be able to maybe post some group responses as well. So please feel free to email me, and I will be happy to talk with you. Thanks for learning.